Before we begin, there is one, I guess, very important announcement that didn't make it to the bulletin nor to our audio announcements that we need to bring up to you. All the Pathfinders are having their meeting tomorrow to complete an honor for while the weather is still cold, right? It's the cold camping honor or winter camping honor, something like that. Unfortunately, because of all the rains and we're not able to go to any campground, but you guys are going to do it in my garage, okay? Well, I guess the Pathfinders, some of them are at Children's Church helping out, but just want to let the parents know that we're going to be meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock at our place. If you need directions, come and talk to us, but we will definitely want to be sure that the kids get there and enjoy the weather is going to be cold, by the way, so it will fit with the winter part of the honor, right? It's been a great and interesting new year, hasn't it? I don't know about you, but I spent my time, I am not completely done with all of my resolutions, but I have spent a considerable time talking and thinking about this new year. And I really want to let you know that I have decided I'm going to change my life. I'm going to become a new person, and that decision I wanted to make in front of you because you're the people who can keep me accountable and who can witness that decision. So I have decided to be a different person, and a while back I had told you that my wife, we were coming back from Guatemala. We were there with some students they were taking some Spanish classes, and I thought that keeping a beard will make my life easier. Now, I know that guys can relate to this, but it's very hard. It takes more work to keep your beard on, I think, than just to shave, without keeping it on if you want to keep it nice and trim. So in the beginning, my wife encouraged me. She said, oh, that makes you, when you have a beard, you look more mature. She meant older. And it makes me look very young. So she was very supportive of it. I thought, well, better for me. I didn't know what was waiting for me. And good for her, too, because she will feel younger. I make her feel better. I don't care, what people think of me. I like who I am anyway, right? That's what we guys say. Ladies are the ones who worry how they look. So I adopted this thing. But, the beard started getting on my way. Have you tried to eat soup with your beard? I just hate that. Afterwards, I feel like I'm smelling that soup all over my face. And it's not because I slobber all over it. It's just this thing in my mind because you always get stuff on it. Until one day my wife goes, your beard smells like food. I thought, come on, I'm usually so careful. Plus, it's not that long to not keep it. Long story short, I started getting tired of it. And she finally says, here within the last 3-4 weeks, she goes, I think I miss you without the beard. And so I thought, well, am I ready to really do this? But I decided I will do it, but I'm going to really kind of think through it. And so as I was thinking about my New Year's resolutions, I decided I'm going to be a new person. I'm going to shave my beard. And I'll never forget this, by the way. I came to church, and there were 2 boys. I'm not going to say their names to not embarrass them. Younger boys, they both came, and one of them looked at me, and he said, Pastor, they saw me for the first time with the beard when I came back from Guatemala, and one of them goes, Pastor, I love the way you look with this new beard, And the other boy goes like, I don't think so. This looks ugly. And they just walked away. These were the exact words. I'm not exaggerating. So I have kind of kept that in my mind. And then my father also called me on Skype and told me that he also doesn't really like how I look with a beard. In fact, he had said, shave it right away because you look really ugly. Okay, and my dad is a very open person. So I think he'll be happy to see this. And I'm going to try and do it as quickly as I can because I wanted you to witness that I'm going to be a new person. Boy, it's thicker than I thought. I know some of you will be happy because you do share the opinion that I don't look that good with the beard. Sorry? Sure, sure. You can say anything you want while I'm doing this. Oh, well, too late now. Too late now. So, that's if your wife lets you, though, right? Well, here is what my wife told me. It's hard to talk and do this, but I'm going to still try and do it. She told me that before, I looked more mature, and she looked younger. And then she said, well, I kind of miss the youthful looks, so I hope that now she's going to really admit that I am a younger person once I shave this. One thing I did find out, guys, is that it's not as hard to shave without the shaving cream if you get used to the pain, and by now I'm used to it, so. Okay, well, not perfect. Not perfect, but definitely better, right? There you go. I am a new person. See, this was my goal. I am a new person, new outlook, new person, right? New year, I'm better. I am gonna really, because of this, I know that from now on, I'm gonna be a new man. I will never, ever lose my temper again. I've made the decision, I've done it. This is the symbolic way of just making the change right now. I am a new man. I will never get mad at my kids. I'm a new man. I will never argue with the referees at the soccer game when I play on Sundays and when they get on my nerves. I'm a new man. I will never be late again. Now, you don't look like you really believe me, do you? Am I really a new man? Just because I changed the way I look a little bit? See, many times we come to a new year, we make a resolution, and we do something like we take the first step and we say, now I'm a new man. I'm changed, that's it. And people around us look and say, really? Because see, just because we change the outlook does not make a difference in who we really are on the inside. New Year comes. We always make our resolutions to be better people, to be more responsible, to hang out with God more, to grow, to change some of the things and the weaknesses that we have. We want to do it so bad, but unfortunately, many times we just change the looks, we make the decision, we take about a week to let everyone know about it. And then we go back exactly to be the people that we used to be. So today, in the next few minutes, I want us to look at 3 Bible characters. They're kind of related to each other, and we could pick any other characters as you, if you wish, but I want to focus on these 3 because I want us to kind of see the difference in what makes the real change in a person. The first individual we're going to look at is Abraham, and we're going to read Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. Verses that we have looked at on the side of the promise that God gave him. But what I want us to pay attention to is Genesis chapter 12, especially verse 4. But I'm going to start reading from verse 1 just to kind of get the picture into perspective. One thing I've noticed lately, and forgive me for that, I keep saying kind of a lot, right? So if I say kind of, throw something at me, all right? So I can stop doing that. All right. Now, the Lord said, this is Genesis 12, verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abraham, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. and in you all the families, or all the nations, other translations say, of the earth will be blessed. So Abraham went forth. From the Lord, and so it's kind of hard to read from there. I'm going to go back to my Bible. So Abraham, as the Lord had left as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. The story of Abraham is always, always inspiring when I read it. See, it is inspiring because very few people can make a decision, especially when driven by God, and when God says, hey, do it, and just say, okay, that's it, I'm going to do it, I'm starting today. How easy is it for you to leave the place of comfort of your home and move not only into a new house that you like better, but start walking towards the unknown, a place that you don't know if you're even going to like? You're going only because of the promise of God. And so Abraham chooses to follow the new direction that God gives him, and follows it, hoping and trusting that God will bring him a better future. By the way, Abraham was living in a city where he was doing quite well. See, he managed, to his credit, to stay faithful to his God, even though his father was involved in idol making. Everyone around him was worshiping idols. And by the way, they were idols made of stone, of metal, or of wood. Very convenient to have your God be made out of objects like that, right? Unless it was too big, and even if it was too big, if God was on your way, what could you do with it, with him? You can, or her, you can leave that goddess or that God away from your living room or wherever they were kind of interfering with your life. So many times, people around us choose, and we often do that, we choose to worship idols, not because we find hope in them, because it's convenient for us to have God do what we want and move him around the way we want to. See, I am reminded every time I read this story of Abraham leaving this place with all the idols, or every time I talk about these idols, I'm reminded of the old saying that I read once in a book for Christian humor. It said, many times we make God, or we use God as a spare tire. We take him out only when we need him. When things are going well, God doesn't exist. When things are going down, I blame God and I try to drag him into my life to fix it and then put him back. That's what the people in Ur were doing. And yet, we have Abraham, who at that time called only Abraham, who left his hometown, took all of his belongings and his whole family, and he moved out in faith that God was going to bring him to something better. See, he was a faithful guy. He was comfortable. He was faithful within the context he was in. But God said, no, this is not the best I have for you. Leave. And Abraham left. When we are willing to follow God's calling, God will always find ways to make our life better than it ever was if we're just willing to follow him. I have a friend of mine, and I would like him to tell his story one of these days here, but just want to very briefly tell you, he struggled for a while because he could not find a job. And then he decided, okay, I'm going to get new training, and he's a very highly trained person. So he went, got new training, started at a new job, and things were going well, and we kept praying together. And I used to tell him, God has a plan, deep inside, wondering, well, God, when are you going to do something? And I was so happy when he got this new job, because he was making, things were starting to happen, and he was performing well, and he started again getting better reputation at his work. And I thought that was it, that was God's answer. Life was comfortable, getting comfortable anyway. And then all of a sudden, he calls me this last week. And he says, Pastor, you won't believe this. I just want to thank you for praying with me. God finally showed me his plan. And I'm thinking, what better can God do for you? he saw this job of a place that he kind of was interested in working at before and sent an application and called them up. And so they called him to an interview, and it was a kind of a very, just to try it out thing. He goes, they call him to a second interview. He goes there, and the guy says, well, fill out your application again, because we don't really, they didn't even retrieve his application from the computer. Except they asked him earlier just for his references. He gives them his references. He goes to his second interview, and the guy says, okay, fill out your application again here because you're starting work today. And he looks and he says, but I have a job. I just started the job. He said, no, we need you here. You're the person for this job. It was the job he always kind of very close to the ideal job he wanted. He had all the qualifications. In fact, the guy said that the reason why he is hiring him is because every single reference he called told him, this is the guy you want for this position that you have, for this managing a small company. And I remember him calling, and he felt like he was crying on the other side, and he said, Pastor, I thought God had showed me what I had to do, but God had a different plan. He moved him from the place where he was comfortable to a new job within a day, him not even expecting, but gave him a better job than he ever thought he could have. See, when you are willing to follow the plan of God, sometimes things will seem like they are not working out all right. Sometimes you will feel like you are stuck, but God is going to lead you to a better time, to a better place, according to his divine plan. And that's what Abraham was doing. He said, I will stay faithful to God. And so he continued to journey he continued on this journey following God's leading, just to discover that God had an amazing plan for him. You know, do you think that Abraham ever missed home? I'm sure he probably did. He probably said, man, I had my bedroom arranged so well and my office was so nice. Now I got to function in these tents. And I don't know, we don't know if we assume he had a stone-built house, because Ur was a city that was, made not of tents, but of stone buildings. And yet, do you ever recall Abraham complaining about, or looking back and saying, oh, I was so good at Ur? In fact, you find him, even when there were conflicts between him and his relative Lot, when their shepherds were arguing about which flocks are going to graze at the better land, Abraham said, for me it's never about the comfort and what's better. For me it's always about following God. Let your shepherds take the better land. I know God has something better for me. That is the faith that he had. God calls, he makes a decision, and he goes for it without looking back, without feeling sorry. Walking and following God's guidance. In fact, what is interesting about Abraham is that he did not become a perfect person. If you look at that same chapter of Genesis chapter 12, we're not going to read the verses, but verses 12, 13, 14, 15 there describe that when he went to Egypt because of famine, and he knew very well the culture there. He said to his wife, they're going to take you away. And what did he make her do? Lie. In fact, participate. He was the one who actually lied first, but made her participate in his lie to a point that he almost could have jeopardized her safety if God wasn't watching over. You find Abraham doing that twice, in fact, later on with another king doing the same thing. I read the story and I'm saying, God, how could a person be so committed to you and be so messed up in some ways? I mean, keep trying to doing things in his own way. And the real lesson is that none of the Bible heroes who are walking after God's heart were perfect. But they were learning as they were walking in his steps. See, Abraham made mistakes, but he continued to follow God, ready and willing to go to wherever God leads him. Then we get to Genesis chapter 12, verse 6 and 7, by the way. One thing I wanted to mention there, let's put that verse on the screen. Genesis chapter 12, verses 6 and 7. we find that Abraham not only walked and followed God, but wherever he stopped, he did something very important. Abraham passed through the land as far as the site of Shechem to the oak of Moreh. Now the Canaanite was then in the land. The Lord appeared to Abraham and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Wherever Abraham went, he will build an altar and he will thank God for his guidance and where God was taking him. He was so faithful in walking with God that God continued to reiterate his promise to him about a new nation. And in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 11 through 13, Hebrews 11, verses 11 through 13, we find out that Abraham, even though not perfect, was placed on the list with not only with all the people of faith, but he was named as the father of faith. By faith, even Sarah herself, the verse tells us, received the ability to conceive even beyond the proper time of life, since she considered him faithful who had promised, referring to God. God is faithful who had promised. Therefore, there was born even of one man, and him as good as dead. This is referring to Abraham because he was already 100 years old. At that, as many descendants as the stars of heaven in number, and innumerable as the sand which is by the seashore. All these died in faith, without receiving the promises, but having seen them and having welcomed them from a distance. You know what this last verse really is saying? That all that Abraham and all the other people of faith did is they looked at the promise and they said, God, we're going to trust you just because you have promised to lead us to that final place of peace and safety. We're going to walk no matter what we have to go through because we trust that that end promise is worth the journey. This is the first character, the character of Abraham. Going very quickly through it. I want to see quickly a vote. How many of you feel that Abraham became a new man as he promised to follow God in this journey? Let me see hands. Was Abraham a new man as he started following God on this journey? Okay? So, we're kind of split on it. All right? But let's say that we'll come back to this and we'll compare him with the other people as we put all this into perspective. Now we're going to go to Abraham's relatives, and in particular to Lot. See, Abraham's nephew Lot was someone who liked the comfort. He missed the comfort of where they used to live. The tents were not enough for him. So he goes and he starts living in this place called Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The two cities that were together, very well developed. In fact, they were so advanced that they started doing crazy things. They were the place where life was happening. They were, the downtown and the uptown of the land there. They were the place where all the progressive people will go to. And life had become very comfortable. I don't know what they had, but they definitely had stuff similar to what we'll consider today, like the internet and cell service. I mean, they had all the comforts of that time. I remember living in Wyoming, and half of the time I couldn't use my new cell phone. Cell phones were quite new at that time because there was no coverage, and I was like, man, where am I living? What am I doing here? When I was in Colorado, it worked everywhere. So Lot said with his family, let's go to the place where the comfort is. And you know the story. Things got so bad that God finally starts saying, hey, I need to intervene. And in Genesis chapter 18, verses 20 to 33, we're not going to read them again because of time. God comes, gives Abraham the final promise that they are going to have a baby boy within a year. And then as the angels leave, they tell him, we're going next to Sodom and Gomorrah because we are going to destroy that city. It's become, in fact, I'm just going to read quickly verse 20. The Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin so grievous that I will go down and see if that to see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. And the verses go on, God tells Abraham, and then, if they don't change, I'm going to destroy those two cities. And so, Abraham, do you remember what he did? Starts pleading with God, right? And in the next verses, he says, God, okay, well, why would you destroy all these people? How about if you find 50 righteous people? Would you do it? And God said, Abraham is almost pleading with God, God, your nature is not to destroy people. I know you very well. Why would you do this? And so Abraham is trying to make sense of this, and he keeps arguing with God all the way. Until the end there, where he says, will you destroy the city for the sake of 10 people? And then God looks back at him and he says, for the sake of 10 people, I will not destroy it just because of you. In the same time, God very well knew that there were not even 10 faithful people among Lot and his family to prevent that city from being destroyed. We live in a society today where a lot of the values that, especially the Christian values that used to drive this society, are being left behind. We find sometimes people who promote the morals that God has placed in this world to protect the very individual rights that we all fight for. We ignore them. And if you argue for them, you're labeled like, old-fashioned, like someone who doesn't respect people, when God placed all these rules, all these guidelines just to prevent and protect people. And if we're not careful, pretty soon, every time a society starts leaving the principles of God aside, it starts deteriorating, because the very foundation that protects society is the moral code of God. And so that's what was happening. And finally, the angels arrive to the city there. Lot sees them and says, hey, would you come to my place? And they said no. In the beginning, they were trying to rush through, and he says, no, you're coming to my place. And so he comes, and the citizens of the city came, and it was very ugly. They wanted to bring these people and abuse them, bring the angels out and abuse them because they were new in the city. Just shows you how low the morals of that city have gone down to. And then we find out that finally Lot gives the crowd outside his daughters and to protect these guests that are the same angels that went to Abraham. And now, as we move down, we go to verse 15. Here are the angels now telling Lot, the very next thing the angels do is they tell Lot, hurry and get out of this place. I'm sorry, verse 14. We'll start Genesis 19, verses 14 through 26. As this will be the last part of our study this morning. Genesis chapter 19, verses 14 through 26. So Lot went out and spoke to his son-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters. And he said, hurry and get out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy the city. But his sons-in-law thought that he was joking. Within the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, for you will be swept away when the city is punished. So the angels warn Lot. He goes and tries to get his family and give them the urgency to leave the city because it's going to be destroyed. And they are hesitant. So finally, like we read, the angels say, no, just take you, your wife, and your 2 daughters and get out. And verse 16, when he hesitated, the man grasped his hand and the hand of his wife and of his 2 daughters, and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. Isn't that amazing? God is telling you, leave this place, and rather than like Abraham getting all of your belongings and going in faith, what does Lot do? Well, I can't leave right now. Just give me a bit more time. I need to pack, maybe whatever he was trying to do was just slowing him down. The angels had to drag him out. And then it continues. And when they had brought them outside, one said, escape for your life. Do not look behind you and do not stay anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains or you will be swept away. But Lot said to them, said to them, "Oh no, my lords, now behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have magnified your loving kindness, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, for the disaster will overtake me, and I will die." He was afraid of what was of the wildlife in the mountains there, or the crime. We don't know exactly what the case was, but there was something that made him fearful. Do you remember Abraham saying, "Well, God, but you're taking me to these areas where there are a lot of tribes that might not like me, especially if they think that I'm coming to take over their land, and they might really, hurt my family?" Abraham said, "No, I'm going to walk because God will protect me." What does Lot do? He's going, but he's saying, "I really don't feel comfortable where you're leading me. So let me adjust your plan." So now, behold, this town is near enough to flee to. Lot suggests a place nearby, and it is small. Please let me escape there. Is it not small, that my life may be saved? And he said to him, the angel said to him, "Behold, I grant you this request also, not to overthrow the town of which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there." Therefore the name of the town was called Zoar. And the sun had risen over the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And the story continues, "And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But his wife, Lot's wife, from behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt." 3 individuals in these stories we have looked at. Abraham, who was so willing to follow God's leading. God told him, he left. He didn't know he was going, but he trusted and kept walking, pleading with God to give faith to everyone else around him. Then we move to the story of the very person who left with him, Lot and his wife. And we find out that this, when God came and gave them a similar appeal, in fact, it was even stronger, because he told him, "If you don't leave, you're going to die." What did they do? Lot starts arguing with him. But did he leave? Did Lot leave? He did. So sometimes in life we'll act like Abraham. We'll go. God gives us a new beginning. God says, "Hey, I want you to make a change, new life, become a new person." We are ready. We just go with him. Sometimes we're hesitant. And God will have to drag us on the journey to prevent us and protect us from destroying ourselves. Did God save Lot? Yes, he did. So see, if you find yourself fighting God, it is okay. It's just that God is telling you this is the only way forward. He will drag you out. Just don't fight him when he drags you out. I don't know if you have ever seen a child who doesn't want to leave a place that's not very well behaved. I remember this lady dragging her son out of the store because he wanted candy and she wouldn't buy it to him, and she was literally dragging him, and he was like hitting with his legs. I mean, it was such a funny scene. That's kind of what I think about Lot. God is saying, "Come on, go." Lot is dragging his feet, but finally he realized and he went. But then there was a third character in that story. We're not going to talk about Lot's daughters and the consequences that came because Lot wanted to change God's plan. But the third big character in this story is Lot's wife. Did she leave? She did. And she was going the direction that God has wanted them to go, right? Did God save her? He did. But what happened is when everything started burning, what did she do? The very thing God said don't do. Don't look back, because the moment you look back, your life will be gone. She looked back because her heart, she left, but her heart hadn't. See, I can change the way I look, but my heart will not be changed. You can make resolutions and announce them to your family and proclaim them to your friends, write them in your journals, but that's not going to make you and me a new person. Until we start walking the direction that God wants us to walk this year. And we're willing to say, "God, my heart is kind of attached there, but help me to not keep my heart there. Help me to bring my heart with me." Because if we don't, we're going to finish the way Lot's wife finished. See, becoming a new person is an experience that needs to have lasting consequences. It has to have lasting change that will happen in our lives. And that change will happen not by us making resolutions, not only by us taking us one step and then forgetting about it, but only if we take a step and we continue to walk down the road that God has called us to take. In Psalm 51:10, David very accurately pinpoints the very problem of why we are not consistent in becoming new people the way or the people that God wants us to be. Psalm 51:10, David is crying out, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me." This is a man who had shed a lot of blood, who had learned from God how to walk with him, but yet he continued to mess up. And he killed a person to take his wife. And yet God didn't give up on him. He said, "David, you got to continue to walk with me." And David looks back and says, "God, there is only one way. You got to recreate my heart. Because anything I do to change myself and make myself new will not accomplish the job. It is the heart that needs to change." Later on, in Ezekiel 36:26, God gave that same promise to people. And he said, as he was talking through Ezekiel, "Moreover, I will give you a new heart, and I will put new spirit within you." Who is this text referring to? David. The words of David. God is saying, the very thing that David asked, that's what you all need. And by the way, Ezekiel 36 is a chapter that talks about Israel's unfaithfulness and how God says when you, after 70 years, after you go and you stay in captivity for 70 years, I'll bring you back from Babylon. And this is the place where God says, "I will give you a new heart and a new spirit within you." I'm sorry. Ezekiel 29 is a chapter that talks about that, but this is the follow-up story. "Moreover, I'll give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh, and I will give you a new heart of flesh." In the Hebrew means I'll give you a soft heart. I'll take your hardened heart, and I'll give you a new heart because I want you to become a new person. That is exactly what Paul also did in the New Testament. He said, "Listen, we can pretend to be plain followers of God," as he was talking to the people in the Philippi, "or you can really let God make you his followers." Just pretending doesn't do it. God needs to change your heart. Philippians chapter 3, verse 13, Paul says these words, "Brethren, I do not regard myself as having laid hold of it yet," talking about the new life and the new heaven, the promise of salvation. "But one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and reaching forward to what lies ahead." Paul says, one thing that I want to do is leave everything that's behind. Let my heart not dwell on the things that are in the past, but look forward to the future. So what does it take to change our hearts? It takes two things, two simple steps. Number one, it takes a decision. None of us changes ourselves without making a decision. A decision is needed. New resolution is needed. Making that commitment is needed. But what will help us to stay with that commitment is outside of our powers. Just because Lot did not look back towards the city didn't mean that his heart wasn't also kind of attached to what he left behind. But what Lot did is he allowed God to keep influencing his heart and keep his eyes focused on the direction he wanted him to go. Just like his father Abraham his uncle Abraham had done. His wife did not let God continue to work on his heart. So see, the first step is a decision to leave the place that might destroy us. But the second step of that is to let someone lead us that knows where they're leading us, someone who can take us to a new place, and on the journey, change our heart and attitude. I remember going hiking in the mountains of Bulgaria as I was growing up. And this particular time, we were going to go on this 6-hour backpacking trip from one cabin to another. They're beautiful mountains back home, and And there is a guy who organizes these trips, and he knows the mountain like the back of his hand. And so we are going, but then when we heard that it was going to be a 6-hour, no, I'm sorry, that it was going to be a 3-hour hike, we decided that we're going to get a shortcut, okay? And so one of the guys there said, oh, I think I was told that there is a shortcut here, and he looked at his map, and he could see the shortcut, and we, 4 of us decided, okay, we're going to go. We let the leader know that we're taking the shortcut, and he said, just be very careful, be sure you follow the markers. Well, as we started going, I don't know what we did. I thought we were following the markers, but there was a point where we got lost. No markers anymore on the trees. There were little colored, marks that you follow. We lost them. And so we kept walking and walking and walking 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. And by this time, we were getting very scared. No human being around us. Until finally we ran into this shepherd guy. And he told us, well, guys, he pointed us to a trail. He told us where to go. And he said, you're about 30 minutes away from the place you are supposed to be. A trip that had to take 3 hours took us 6.5 hours just because we thought we knew where we were going. See, just to make the decision and the resolutions we make is important, but not enough. What we need is someone who knows the way to lead us there. And that someone is God. See, there is no one else who can lead us in the right way and to make us get where, to make us become, to help us become what He has intended for us to be, but the one who really designed us and create the purpose for our lives, which is God. So throughout this new year, I hope that we not only look differently, we not only make a decision to be different, but we actually ask God to walk ahead of us. And when we enjoy the comfort of life and God says, no, that's not where I want you to be, that we get out as Abraham and walk forward. When we are hesitant and we are kind of like Lot, don't want to move, we let God grab us by the hand and drag us out rather than us destroying ourselves. And I pray that we never become like Lot's wife. When God drags us out, for us to keep our heart back to the very place that will cost us our own existence. See, we can do all this because it is worth it. And why is it worth it? My brother spoke about it last week. Because everything on this earth is worth nothing compared to the eternal life that we're going to receive at the second coming of Jesus. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 14 says this, therefore, beloved, since you look for these things, be diligent to be found by Him in peace, spotless and blameless. As we look at these things in the future, referring to the promise there in 2 Peter chapter 3 of God's coming, try to be found in Him in peace, spotless and blameless. God wants to change your heart. God wants us to be faithful followers of Him, not because He just wants to have these people around Himself, but because He wants to lead us to the best place for our lives, the new heaven and the new earth. In Proverbs 23:26, we find these words of Solomon that are the words of God towards the whole human race. My son, my daughter, give me your heart, and let your eyes delight in my ways. In 2016, you have already done the new look. I'm sure that you already have the plans written out. But as you go, are you doing this with the only one who can guide you to continue to pursue the direction you've taken? And are you also walking with God, the only one who can, in the journey, change your heart from desiring to do the old stuff to desire to walk and be more and more like Him? Because if you do, and if I do, God will find ways to adjust our ways to His ways and our plans to His plans. And through that, we'll experience the greatest joy that He has prepared for us. Are you like Abraham? ready to follow God? Are you like Lot, who even though you hesitate, you let God still lead you? And I pray and hope that none of us becomes once again like Lot's wife. So we have to lose ourselves and the hope for eternal life and our existence, because we are too stubborn to let someone who knows the way lead us. Are you ready to live your will, your life, and your future into the hands of God? I hope and pray that we all do that. Amen.
Stand with us as we sing this last song. We bow down. We surrender our will to the will of God.